right, welcome back to the Wages of Cine 31 Days of Horror. I'm Jonathan Cook, and on this episode I will be talking about the Netflix newly released film Gerald's Game. This movie is an adaptation of the Stephen King novel by the same name, and just to let you know up front, I went into this movie fresh. Yeah, I recognized the title and I knew this was a Stephen King story, but I never read this novel and I had no idea what it was about. Now, I want to start by saying that I liked this movie a lot. I've seen many of the Stephen King films, and I heard that this was a faithful adaptation to the novel. Whether it was or not, I can tell you the film itself, to me, is one of the best Stephen King movies to date. The plot revolves around an aged married couple who have lost a bit of the romantic excitement in their relationship, so they decide to have this weekend getaway at a remote lake house, and they have plans to experiment with these kinky fantasies to help once again ignite the flame in their love life. But unfortunately, while the wife Jessie is handcuffed to the bed rails during one of these fantasy games, the husband Gerald dies unexpectedly of a heart attack. Yikes. We've all been there though, am I right? Right! So, that's the movie's main pitch. It begins by playing around with this theme that maybe the person you married isn't who you thought they were, but then it quickly turns into this psychological thriller, and we now have this dire situation presented to us that needs to be resolved because she's out there all by herself in this secluded house in the middle of nowhere, and there's no help in sight.
Try to go for help. There's no one for miles.
Gerald?
This puts the wife at a severe risk of dying from dehydration, or even worse, at the jaws of this hungry stray dog that's acquired a taste for fresh meat. And to top it off, the situation is giving her a mental breakdown, causing her to see hallucinations of herself and even her husband, along with some other crazy visions.
You're not real. You're not real.
Now, without ruining anything, here's a couple of the highlights that I liked most about this film. Number 1, actress Carla Gugino. This one heck of a performance on her end, and just to be clear, there are no weak actors throughout this entire film. Now, Bruce Greenwood plays the husband Gerald, and it's definitely one of his better roles that he's portrayed his entire career. But Carla Gugino owns this movie. She gets probably 90% of the screen time, and her performance is completely authentic. You can feel the desperation and the exhaustion in her voice as time progresses. And as a viewer, you get a firm sense of her struggle and the tension that builds from scene to scene. And it's also fun to watch her have these conversations with her other self, who's in a very different emotional state. Number 2, the script. This is a well-written script. The dialogue doesn't feel forced, and it's layered with subtext rather than characters speaking in endless, detailed exposition. And the story is structured like a puzzle where each piece is gradually attached as Jessie thinks her way out of the situation that she's in. Now, some of the pieces come together as she remembers early moments in her life, and other pieces come from her conversations that she has with these hallucinations in the room as her mind is becoming unstable and desperate due to the circumstance. Number 3, director Mike Flanagan. Mike has plenty of experience in the horror genre with earlier films like Oculus, Hush, and Ouija, The Origin of Evil. And while this film is less jump scares and more of a atmospheric type of horror, he made some great choices with the visual storytelling, and I think my favorite was his use of scene transitions from flashbacks to present day. There were these times when the flashback would take place in the same room, and it would simply fade out with a dimming light as the present day came into focus. It was similar to something that you'd see in like a stage play, and a clever choice, in my opinion, because you don't see this often in film, and he worked it well, and it was very effective. So those are the main highlights of the film for me. And there isn't much that I didn't like about the film, but there is one thing that I wish would have played out a little bit differently. The ending has a little bit of a twist to it, and I won't go into too much detail about it, but it has to do with one of the hallucinations from earlier in the film. you find out that there's something more to this particular vision than what you originally thought. And to me, it feels like this reveal sort of took away from the symbolism of this thing that's in the story. The ending, in my opinion, would have been a lot heavier. It would have left you with more to think about if they would have left this reveal out of the movie. But really, that's just me being nitpicky. Overall, this was a great film. It is a film for horror fans, and if you are a horror fan, I guarantee you will enjoy it. It is currently only on Netflix. I highly recommend it. So give it a watch if you get a chance, and join us tomorrow for the next Wages of Cine, 31 Days of Horror.